It was supposed to be the perfect escape, a late summer pilgrimage to the cathedral silence of British Columbia's Wells Gray Provincial Park. Towering lodgepole pines swayed like green bell towers, glacial rivers flashed silver between canyon walls, and the night sky poured out meteors so bright you could read by them. Bob and Jackie Johnson, their daughters Janet and Karen, and Jackie's parents George and Edith Bentley had made this drive from Kelowna many times. They were nature lovers. Calm, kind people. On August 6, 1982, Edith phoned a cousin from a roadside booth, her voice bubbling with plans for trout, campfire stories, and marshmallows. It was the last sound any loved one would ever hear from the family. 10 days later, Bob failed to clock in at Gorman Brothers' sawmill, an absence so unheard of that his foreman drove to the Johnson house that very night. The lights were off, mail piled up, their dogs still in the yard. By dawn, the RCMP had filed a missing persons bulletin. No campsite registration, no gas station receipt, no eyewitness on the 150-kilometer ribbon of logging roads that lace Wells Gray like spider silk. In 1982, there were no GPS pings or debit card trails, only hand-drawn forestry maps, and the hope that a dusty ranger might remember a license plate. Even their closest friends couldn't imagine what had gone wrong. There had been no fights, no deaths, no storm. They had simply vanished, like breath into cold air. Wells Gray is colossal, more than 5,400 square kilometers of lava plateaus, hidden ravines, and waterfalls tall enough to swallow sound. RCMP launched what was then the largest ground search in provincial history. Dog teams, civil air search and rescue sorties, volunteer bush pilots, and logging companies donating fuel and graders to push newly tangled roads open. Helicopters hovered so low, their rotors shaved treetops, hoping to spot a white camper roof glinting under the sun. Divers searched cold lakes, yet each sortie returned with nothing but endless green on green. The community didn't give up. Families organized vigils. Flyers were stapled to grocery store boards as far away as Calgary. The name Johnson Bentley became a symbol of loss, of fear, and of something horrible just out of sight. On September 13, 1982, mushroom picker Randy Flack followed an elk trail off Battle Mountain Road and stopped dead. The nose of a Ford camper protruded from pine needles. Glass melted into blue puddles. Investigators found 4 charcoal black bodies fused to cab seats. In the shell of the camper box, 2 smaller forms lay curled as if sleeping. Fire had devoured their faces, but dental charts spoke with grim clarity. Bob, Jackie, George, Edith, Janet, and Karen. All of them. What shocked detectives even more was the careful attempt to bury the truck beneath slash piles, a crude camouflage that almost worked. The killer had tried to erase both evidence and memory, yet a random forager uncovered it by chance. The interior was an oven. Fire patterns suggested accelerants. It hadn't been a spontaneous blaze. It had been planned, coldly, thoroughly, and with intimate knowledge of fire behavior. Pathologists in Kamloops worked through scorched bone and collapsed organs. All 4 adults had been seated when struck by .22 caliber rounds. Entry wounds, neat, execution style. But the girls told a different, nauseating story. Lack of charring on their lungs proved they were killed days after the fire. Stomach contents placed their deaths on August 16th and 17th. Trace bruising and defensive cuts implied captivity, and forensic entomology from insect activity on Janet's remains suggested an isolated enclosure, likely a shack where flies could still enter. Their final hours were pieced together from silence. They had been alive, long enough to cry, to ask why, to miss their parents. It broke even the most experienced officers. One RCMP investigator resigned from the force shortly after. He couldn't carry it anymore. Public horror spiked, then curdled into fear. Wells Gray's visitor numbers plummeted. One campground posted a hand-painted sign, "Travel in pairs, killer still at large." RCMP fielded 1,300 plus tips, drove a full-scale replica of the camper cross-country, and even reenacted holiday weekend traffic on Highway 5 to pinpoint eyewitness gaps. A $7,500 reward funded by local businesses kept fresh posters in coffee shops from Kamloops to Thunder Bay. They tried everything: psychics, manhunts, FBI profilers, A criminal sketch artist attempted to draw a suspect based on a dream from a woman in Edmonton, but nothing fit. The case stagnated. The family's relatives were forced to return to work, to birthdays, to a world that kept spinning without answers. Early October 1983, a road-clearing crew on Trophy Mountain discovered another burned truck, same VIN, same weld marks, proving the charred camper at Battle Mountain had been moved post-crime. That revelation reshaped the map. Whoever killed the family felt confident enough to revisit evidence, risk detection, and shift the scene. Days later, a Clearwater resident phoned police. A year back, a soft-spoken neighbor had asked how to legally salvage a pickup after a fire, and oddly, how to patch .22 caliber holes in a door panel. The name he gave was David William Shearing. He had slipped through the cracks. No one had connected him before, but once the name was on paper, the dominoes began to fall. Shearing was 24, thin, bookish, a C-average dropout who alternated mechanic shifts with long, lonely hunting trips. Under fluorescent interrogation lights, he denied everything, but physical evidence stacked like cordwood. Rifle ballistic match, carpet fibers from the camper in his truck, and a boot print outside the Bentley's burned campsite. 48 hours in, he broke. He confessed to approaching the Johnson Bentley camp after dark because the family atmosphere intrigued him. He shot the adults first, so they wouldn't scream, then forced Janet and Karen into his own pickup. For 6 days, he kept them in a rough-hewn trapper's cabin, assaulting Janet repeatedly while Karen was bound nearby. On the 7th day, he led each girl separately into the forest and pulled the trigger. He poured fuel on both crime scenes, drove the camper to Battle Mountain to stage a robbery, and returned to his normal life. There was no rage, no panic, just cold, methodical evil. He told investigators he wasn't sure why he did it. It just happened. In April 1984, Shearing pled guilty to 6 counts of second-degree murder. Canada's legal framework at the time capped parole ineligibility at 25 years. The courtroom gallery overflowed. Some attendees vomited after hearing the confession details. When the judge called it a cold-blooded, senseless execution, Shearing blinked once but showed no emotion. Over decades, he changed his surname to Ennis, developed a prison reputation for woodworking, and filed parole bids in 2008, 2012, 2014, and 2021. Each time, the families returned, armed with victim impact statements, petitions, and community outrage. But with each hearing, wounds reopened. Survivors were forced to rehearse the horror for a board that never truly understood it. He remains behind bars, but the fear never leaves, because he can always apply again. Today, the original campsite is unmarked, its coordinates known mostly to old guard RCMP and a few aging reporters. Saplings grow where the fire burned hottest. Snowmelt erases boot prints each spring. But locals whisper the story around lodge fireplaces, the family that vanished, the girls who screamed into the cedar night, and the monster who thought a fire would silence them. Backpackers who know linger at dusk, staring into flickering flames, imagining an unseen rifle barrel beyond the tree line. Wells Gray remains achingly beautiful, yet shadowed by the knowledge that paradise can turn Predator's lair in a single heartbeat. Whenever a loon's call echoes across Myrtle Lake or a truck engine idles at a trailhead past dark, someone inevitably wonders, could it happen again?